Imagine you are holding a book. It is old, genuinely old, carbon dated to somewhere between 1404 and 1438, which makes it older than the Gutenberg Bible. The pages are vellum, made from calf skin, and they have survived 600 years in reasonable condition. The book is illustrated, elaborately illustrated. There are drawings of plants, hundreds of them, across dozens of pages, rendered with the kind of careful detail that suggests someone who knew what they were looking at. Except no botanist in 600 years has been able to identify a single one of them. The plants do not exist. Or if they do, no one has found them. There are astronomical diagrams, circular charts with symbols arranged around a central point, the kind of thing you would expect to find in a medieval star atlas. Except the constellations do not match any known star system. There are pages that appear to show women bathing in elaborate connected pools and channels filled with a green liquid, surrounded by labels in the same unknown script. There are pages that look like pharmaceutical recipes with illustrations of plant parts in containers annotated in the same hand, and running through all of it on every page is a text, a script that looks like a language. That has the visual rhythm of a language, that flows across the page the way writing flows when the person producing it knows what they are writing, and that no one in 600 years of trying has been able to read. This is the Voynich Manuscript. And the most unsettling thing about it is not that it has not been decoded. It is the possibility that there is nothing to decode. The physical history of the manuscript is better documented than its contents. It first appeared in recorded history in 1639, when it was mentioned in a letter by a Bohemian physician named Georg Barisch, who had been puzzling over it for years and wrote to the Jesuit scholar Athanasius Kircher asking for help. Kircher, who was one of the most learned men in Europe at the time, apparently did not solve it either, though the manuscript eventually ended up in the possession of his institution. It passed through several hands over the following centuries. In 1912, a Polish book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich purchased it from the Jesuit college at Villa Mondragone in Italy, along with a collection of other manuscripts. He spent the rest of his life trying to understand what he had bought. He could not. After his death, the manuscript passed through more hands until it was purchased by Hans Peter Krauss, a rare book dealer who donated it to Yale University in 1969, where it currently resides in the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library, cataloged as MS408. You can look at every page of it online right now. The entire manuscript has been digitized and made freely available. 600 years of existence, 40 years of public digital access, still unread. The manuscript is divided into what researchers have identified as 6 sections based on the apparent subject matter of the illustrations. The herbal section is the largest, filling roughly half the book, and contains the unidentifiable plant drawings. The astronomical section contains circular diagrams with what appear to be star charts and zodiac symbols, though the zodiac representations differ from standard medieval iconography in ways that have never been satisfactorily explained. The biological section is the one that tends to unsettle people most on first encounter. It contains page after page of small female figures in what appear to be pools or bathing structures connected by elaborate networks of tubes and channels, all labeled in the manuscript script. The cosmological section contains large fold-out pages with circular diagrams that appear to represent something planetary or cosmological, but do not correspond to any known medieval model of the universe. The pharmaceutical section contains drawings of plant parts alongside containers that resemble those used in medieval medicine. And the final section, which researchers sometimes call the recipes section, contains dense paragraphs of text with small illustrations of stars. The only section that has the appearance of a straightforward text without accompanying complex diagrams. None of it can be read. All of it appears to be about something. The history of attempts to decode the Voynich manuscript is in some ways more interesting than the manuscript itself, because it is a catalog of failure by people who were not accustomed to failing. During World War II, the manuscript was examined by some of the most accomplished cryptanalysts in the world, people who had broken genuinely sophisticated military ciphers under time pressure. They could not crack it. William Friedman, who is widely regarded as the father of American cryptology, and who led the team that broke Japan's purple cipher, spent years on the Voynich manuscript. He produced no solution. The National Security Agency has examined it. Academic cryptographers, computational linguists, medieval historians, and botanists have all brought their specific expertise to bear on it over decades. None of them have produced a reading that the scholarly community has accepted. In 2019, a team of researchers used artificial intelligence to analyze the statistical patterns in the text and proposed that the underlying language might be Hebrew written in an unusual encoding. The proposal generated significant press coverage and significant skepticism. The scholarly community did not accept it as a solution. The manuscript remained unread. Here is where the story becomes genuinely strange, because the reason no one has been able to decode the Voynich manuscript may not be that the code is too sophisticated. It may be that there is no code. The text of the Voynich manuscript has been subjected to extensive statistical analysis, and what the analysis reveals is profoundly contradictory. On one hand, the text behaves like a natural language in several measurable ways. It follows something called Zipf's law, a bay or Theof's law, a baistro bay del, a Theoplo, statistical pattern observed in all known natural languages, where the frequency of words follows a predictable mathematical distribution. It has what appears to be grammar, in the sense that certain symbols tend to appear at the beginnings of words and others at the ends, and certain sequences appear and reappear in ways that suggest syntactic structure. The text varies between sections in ways that are consistent with the sections being about different subjects, the way a book about plants would use different vocabulary from a book about astronomy. On the other hand, the text has features that no natural language shares. The rate of word repetition within single pages is far higher than any known language would produce. Certain words appear dozens of times in a short passage in ways that are inconsistent with any natural linguistic pattern. There are almost no words that appear only once in the entire manuscript, which is statistically anomalous for a natural language text of this length. The text behaves enough like language to rule out simple random generation, and behaves enough unlike language to resist all the tools designed to analyze actual language. This has produced three theories that have persisted for decades without any of them being definitively proven or disproven. The first is that the manuscript is a genuine, encrypted text in a real language, using a cipher that has not yet been broken. This would explain the language-like statistical features while accounting for the failure to decode it. The problem with this theory is that the statistical anomalies, the unusual word repetition rates, the absence of single-use words are not what you would expect from a sophisticated cipher applied to a natural language. Encrypted text tends to preserve the statistical fingerprints of the underlying language at some level of analysis. The Voynich text does not behave like an encryption of any language that has been tested against it. The second theory is that it is a constructed language invented specifically for this manuscript, with its own grammar and vocabulary that corresponds to nothing outside itself. This would explain the grammar-like structure and the statistical anomalies simultaneously. The problem is that constructed languages of this period, of which there are several known examples, were always accompanied by explanatory keys or dictionaries or both. No key has been found. The third theory is that the entire manuscript is an elaborate hoax, a skilled production designed to look like a coded text without containing any actual information. This would explain all the statistical anomalies, since a hoaxer trying to produce convincing-looking text might produce exactly the kind of surface language likeness without the deeper structural features that actual language contains. The problem with this theory is the carbon dating. The vellum is genuinely from the early 15th century, producing several hundred pages of convincing fake linguistic text in the early 15th century, before modern understanding of statistical linguistics would have required a level of sophistication that seems implausible, though not impossible. Implausible and impossible are not the same thing. What the manuscript actually is remains, 600 years after the vellum was cut, genuinely unknown, not in the way that cold cases are unknown, where the solution exists and has simply not been found. possibly in a more fundamental way. It may be that the Voynich Manuscript is the only object of its kind in human intellectual history, a text that was produced by human hands, with human intention, using something that resembles human language, about subjects that were important enough to illustrate in elaborate detail, which has permanently and completely resisted every attempt by human minds to understand it. If it is a hoax, then whoever made it was so skilled that 6 centuries of the most sophisticated analytical tools available to human civilization have been unable to detect the deception. If it is a real language, then something was lost so completely that no trace of it remains anywhere else in the historical record. If it is a constructed language, then its creator took the key to the grave with such finality that no secondary source, no note, no hint has surfaced in 600 years of scholarship. You can look at it right now. Every page, every plant that does not exist, every star chart that does not match the sky, every woman in every green pool. The person who wrote it knew what it said. Maybe several people knew, and then they all died, and what they knew died with them, and what was left was this. A book that looks like it contains everything and that no one can open.